In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. As far as invocation is concerned, we have a perfect command of what can help the believer to see his wishes come true by divine grace. But it must be said right away, in our country, people prefer the shenanigans of the charlatan to the prayers of the religious. I have heard everything about me in this country, but I have never heard anything important. Not everyone can work for the truth, only some people can do it. Whoever works for the truth must first condemn himself and also his own country. Mother was very concerned for Senegal. If we want our country to be useful to us, we must think about this thing which is indispensable. In a country, if everyone is lost, the world has ended for its people. In Senegal, it is very difficult to enforce discipline, although it is the basis of all growth. If morals deteriorate, it will be very difficult to abide by the divine laws. Unfortunately, the youth of our country is little or not at all penetrated by the fundamental principles of Islam. Convinced that the youth of our country is wrong, it is our most crucial duty to put it on the right track. If it is required for the adults to behave as models, it is no less flattering for children to take over. What the country expects from each and every one of them is to adopt a responsible attitude. In this respect, a high sense of moderation is required so that the basis of our objectivity does not crack under the weight of our blunders. Lack of resources means for us to remain eternally lazy, hence the need to be a handyman. Rainwater stagnating in the streets, it is good for washing shoes. That is where the whole story of our development is summed up. In Senegal, the colonizers never allowed a marabout to do anything other than remain a marabout, with all that it entails in terms of self effacement, caricature, and farce. Is it allowed for everyone to declare themselves heroic in the face of such an arsenal of depersonalization, especially because we are dealing here with colonizers and colonized people? That has nothing to do with Islam. It is true that Confucius is not Cochabamba and that China is far from being Senegal, and yet they share a common philosophical basis, not complacently admitting the superiority of the master, but this philosophy that provided China with the energy to overcome nature, unfortunately only gave the Senegalese an opportunity to blackmail their fellow citizens. Not compressing the meaning of the lofty thoughts contained in the Quran to our just aspirations, breaking with that inferiority complex which makes us shy, breaking with our rudimentary and parsimonious precedents, assimilating all the knowledge that is available to us, and giving the widest possible expansion of it, therein lies the duty of all of us. Senegalese Islam is choking under the strain of animistic traditions, like Christianity under the pressure of Roman paganism. The word of God and the preaching of the fetishists become confused. The soul of the Senegalese Muslim is condemned to uncertainty. Good and evil exist only to bow to the will of the charlatan. What is unfortunate for the Senegalese Muslim is that he always tends to confuse Islam and the five pillars, which, by the way, unfortunately, are only an emblem of it. If prayer ceases to be the sacredness of our daily acts, woe betide those who, through ignorance, become its victims. For prayer is to the soul what fertilizer is to the surface of the soil. It either improves it or it crushes it. It is a matter of dosage and, above all, a matter of mystical education. As Maudo has said, in this country, ancestral customs will always be above religion. Ancestral legacies are often privileged to the detriment of the good practices dictated by the Quran, a book that must be taken into consideration. Too many customs ruin and can be harmful to the individual and the society in which he lives. As I was talking about it the other day with a young religious leader, because in this country everybody is a religious leader, the attitude of some young people, which consists in criticizing without bringing its contribution to the reconversion of mentalities, becomes more and more worrying. Holiness is not synonymous with maraboutism. Authenticity is not synonymous with creatism. The example of King David is here for us, provided by the Quran. Act in gratitude. He did not say, shout, as we do today in mosque, in religious gatherings. We shout, we don't act, and God said to David's family, act in gratitude. While it is tempting for an underdeveloped person to be both talkative and clumsy, it is no less true that incantations have never made heaven happy. Most of our marabouts, devoid of any serious education, are becoming more and more a danger not only for the religion but for the whole Senegalese society. To be a marabout means to have harmful habits because one can no longer be an active collaborator nor have active collaborators. One of my elder marabouts said this to me: you love the world too much to deserve God's trust. I replied, you hate the world too much to deserve God's vicariate. This means that there must be a third figure waiting for both of us at the crossroads, and this is the famous law of the middle ground that the great Cheikh Ahmed Tidiane often talks about. Journalists can be as harmful as poets. They can create above the essential and make the accessory the very basis of information. Senegal recently confided to me, I'm nostalgic for what I used to be and what I have ceased to be. I want to become again a good, solid, courageous, authentic country, full of energy, not confusing the jumping of a valiant youth with the jumping of a monkey drunk with cognac. The country needs to be washed, a washing that must be based on legitimacy. And since it has been said that the only legitimacy took place in 2000, even if some time later there was a breakup, it must be washed. There must be discipline in this country, but also we must accept that one day there must be true legitimacy. When we need something, we must not take it by force. The problem that arises nowadays is not that of the separation of powers. The problem that arises is who appoints whom, because there is still an absence of legitimacy. There we can say that the role of political leaders is to learn to respect the hierarchy of things, to demand legitimacy first, before banging our ears about this or that appointment. Freedom is more stubborn than a prison cell, more intransigent even than the grave, by virtue of the fact that it draws its energy from a breath that is particularly regenerative. If it is ordered to the adults to behave as models, it is no less flattering for the children to take over. What the country expects from each and every one of them is to adopt a responsible attitude. In this respect, a high sense of moderation is required so that the basis of our objectivity does not crack under the weight of our blunders. It is good to make ablutions, to pray, and to pray the rosary, but that is not enough to develop a country like Senegal. Marabout and other religious leaders are often criticized for not speaking up when they should, but that does not concern me because I have said everything here in Senegal. I have heard everything in this country, but I have never heard anything important. I spoke when it was needed. I have become old. The younger ones must take over.